opportunity. So I hope everyone had a wonderful Labor Day weekend, and that is actually the topic, kind of what brought me to the decision to have this topic today is, I was just on the road for 9 days, and this also answers a question that I'm frequently asked when going over people's food sensitivity lists and results is, how do I implement this in the real world? When cooking at home, it's pretty easy, right? You have direct control over the ingredients, but how do you navigate sometimes multiple different sensitivities in restaurant settings or social gatherings or parties? So I wanted to come up with a few of my top tips for making this as accessible and easy as possible. So the theme that you're going to hear is a lot of this comes down to preparation and experience. There's very much a learning curve to figuring out how to deal with sensitivities in the real world. So to kind of paint a scenario, oftentimes what I'll see in my practice is somebody comes in for, XYZ health concerns, fatigue, digestive issues, headaches, insomnia, depression, anxiety, weight issues, things along those lines. We run food sensitivities and a food sensitivity test, and that comes back with, a handful of results of foods that we're going to need to avoid for an average of between 3 to 6 months, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, depending on the situation, but in general, it's there. And so the inevitable question comes up of, well, so how do I implement this if I go to a restaurant or a friend's house or something along those lines? So in that case, and especially, again, like I said, over the past 9 days on my road trip, this came up. There are certain foods I still don't eat. I don't eat gluten. I don't eat tomatoes. I don't eat onions. And so these came up as we're sitting in, going for sometimes 8-9 hours sitting in a car at a time and having to stop at gas stations and rely on snacks and things along those lines. And then also going to restaurants in places like Butte, Montana, where, we're lucky if they know what gluten is. So that's where I thought this would be an appropriate talk. So my tip number 1 for restaurants, and really and truly for friends gatherings too, but for restaurants in particular, first one is plan ahead. So what I mean by that is look at different restaurant options and look at their menus. If you're going with a lot of friends, a lot of family, if you have the capacity to influence the restaurant choice, fantastic. Assert your opinion. Like if you're gluten and dairy free, for example, and they want to go to an Italian food place, see if maybe they're open to somewhere else. Or the second part to that is look at the menu ahead of time. So I'm sure most of you are doing this. Basically, every restaurant has their menu online, and you can look and kind of get an idea of what options they have. Do they have a gluten-free menu? Do they have allergens listed out next to the menu items? But you can kind of orient yourself with the menu. Second option, because I work with a lot of people who are sensitive to soy, and soy is often used as the oils, the cooking oil in restaurants. So once you've found a restaurant that seems to be pretty decent, they have different options that it seems like you can have, my next step, and I really emphasize this at the beginning as you're kind of navigating all of this for the first time and figuring it all out, second step, if necessary, is to call the restaurant. So call the restaurant and ask and just say, hey, I'm coming in later, on this day at this time, and I have these food sensitivities, list them off. I'm looking at this and this items on the menu. How does that work? And how would I need to modify that when I come in to order? And speaking from experience, so I was a server in college at a bar that served kind of pub type food, high quality pub type food. So burgers, sandwiches, salads, things like that. I'll never forget, and this was over 10 years ago, we had a lady call. She was coming in with a large party, 3 days she's calling 3 days in advance. So in 3 days, she and this large party are coming in. It's a busy night. I'm pretty sure they were coming in on a Friday night. And she said, I'm allergic to garlic, olives, so I can't have olive oil, butter, listed off a list of things. And she was speaking to the manager, which is the other thing that I would encourage. Servers might not have the time. Hostesses aren't going to have the wherewithal either. So I would call in advance and speak with the manager. And this is what she did. She spoke with the kitchen manager. I have X, Y, and Z symptoms, and they were pretty ubiquitous. XYZ sensitivities, pretty ubiquitous in a lot of cooking. And the manager, they worked together, figured out a meal, already had it pre-prepared and kind of pre-ordered, if you will. So the manager prepped it that morning, set it aside for when she was going to come in. And he went on and on about how much he appreciated that, because they weren't suddenly, in the midst of a Friday rush hour having to reconfigure their kitchen. And so it saved her time and anxiety. It saved us time and anxiety, and we both loved it. So I know it will feel weird at first, and it might feel uncomfortable to really have to go out of your way and prepare for going to a restaurant, but it doesn't mean it's inappropriate. It only feels weird because you've never done it before. But it's either that or kind of create this anxiety in the social situation at the restaurant. You get there, there's nothing that you can eat. Then you have to eat something that's going to make you feel bad, like physically flare your symptoms. And so it just kind of creates this whole stress circle. So tip number one, try to choose the restaurant if you can, even if going with a group of friends. If not, look at the restaurant menu ahead of time, find a couple of options that look decent, call the restaurant, speak with the manager, say, hey, I'm coming in at this time. I have these sensitivities. I'm looking at these menu items. What do you think? How do I need to modify this? Can I kind of pre-order this or prepare for it in advance? Okay. So those would be the first few tips. Now, if it's just kind of an off the cuff, like you're just going to swing by a restaurant, I would still encourage looking at the menu ahead of time. And then you can ask when you get to the restaurant and ask and say, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. My biggest piece of advice too is looking more at the mental side of this. Like I said, I know it can feel uncomfortable to have to ask a lot of questions before ordering something, what seems like a simple process, but you never know who might be listening. So what I mean by that is there's been several times where I was that person, hey, I can't do this, this, and this. Can we please, find a way to avoid those things? And somebody else at the table or even a neighboring table, or one time it was the server themselves, pulled me off to the side later and said, hey, I recognized how you were ordering this. I actually have suspected, I have several food sensitivities too. How did you get into this? How did you figure that out? And it allows your authenticity, allows the other person to be authentic. And they might be dealing with the same thing, but not have taken the steps that you already have, or be too embarrassed to assert themselves. So your authenticity can possibly be the start to somebody else's healing journey, or allow somebody else to feel heard. So navigating restaurants, those are the first two tips. Tip number 3 is, and this is the part where it comes with experience, is you'll eventually get a repertoire of restaurants down, local as well as some healthier options as far as chains go. So local options, that depends on your area. Here in Denver, Colorado, I have several different restaurants that I know their menu. I know how I need to modify it, if I need to modify it, how they cook, what they cook in. So it's very, there are certain restaurants where it's just a go-to. Chain restaurants, Chipotle is a really great option. They often have a lot of, they have salad bowls, they have rice bowls, they have their ingredients are really high quality. So Chipotle is often a great option. Mod Market is another great one. Garbanzo's is another great one. Tokyo Joe's. So there are different restaurants that you can check out that are both local and chain, to kind of build up your repertoire, so you've got that go-to and you don't have to, put in the work every single time you want to eat out. Hi, Marissa. Thanks for joining. So good to see you. So let's see. I think those are the biggest tips as far as restaurants go. So now I'm going to transition to social gatherings. Social gatherings, what I mean by social gatherings are like if a bunch of your friends are making dinner or having a potluck, or, you know, we're about to get into football season, so tailgating, something along those lines. So not in a restaurant, in somebody's home, but you still don't have direct control over the food. So in those situations, tip number one, if it's a potluck of any kind, obviously you're already going to be doing this. This is the nature of potlucks. But even if it's not, even like we have a family dinner every week, and oftentimes a bunch of us bring food. I always encourage bring like 1 to 2 dishes that you know you can eat. So that way, if everybody else brings something like fried cheese or something that you're never gonna eat, you know you have something there that is sufficient. And I'm not talking like crackers and dip, right? Because that's not really gonna be sufficient. But you could do like veggies and hummus and maybe grilled chicken sausage or just grilled chicken. You could do like wraps, like turkey wraps or tuna wraps or chicken salad wraps. Something where it's sufficient enough that if you're left with only being able to eat that, you're still good to go. And that's why I often encourage, you know, 2 sometimes is better. So you can bring like a crackers and dip or chips and dip. And then also some kind of like a large salad is one of my go-tos. I would say large salads, veggies and hummus, and some kind of grilled meat are usually my go-tos. And then you know you're set. If it's not a potluck and somebody is making dinner for you, if this is a close friend or family member, and frankly, even if they're not, let's say it's a close friend of a spouse or something, again, this is where it's gonna be uncomfortable, but really strive to find your voice. So ask, you know, if you don't have their email already, ask for it or their phone number and reach out to them ahead of time. Hey, so excited for dinner on Thursday. By the way, I wanted to share that I have these food restrictions. You know, I have these sensitivities. I'm really working on my health, so I'm trying my best to do these. Share what they are, and then ask, you know, would there be any way, can I help with dinner and bring something? Would there be any way to make a portion of the meal that doesn't have these ingredients? Or, you know, was the recipe that you were doing, is it easily modifiable to include that? So again, to share a real world experience, one of my clients who happened to also be a family member, we had just gotten started on all of this, and it was, we were a month away from Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving came around, we have this huge, you know, typical family gathering. There's probably 10 at least of us there. And she brought her own food for one of the meals. For the actual Thanksgiving meal, she coordinated with the host, made certain things, at least like the main turkey and a few of the side dishes accommodated her sensitivities. So it wasn't odd at all. And when anybody asked, you know, hey, why are you doing that? Why are you avoiding these foods? What got you into this? You know, we tend to take those kinds of questions antagonistically, because sometimes they inherently sound like that. Like, why are you doing that? Why are you eating that way? But like I said before, oftentimes people are asking because they might wonder if they have the same issue. They might wonder if what you're doing helps them. So when you take a posture of, you know what, I'm really prioritizing my health right now. I wasn't feeling the best that I know I could. So I'm working with this person. I figured out these foods don't work with me. So I don't eat them. I choose to not eat them. There's a really big energetic difference between saying, I am consciously making this choice for my health and well-being versus I can't have that food, right? I can't have means you're giving away your power. I choose to not eat that because it doesn't align with me. You're immediately taking back that power. So hold that posture. And like I said, if you got to fake it till you make it, which you probably will at first because it is uncomfortable, just know it's not uncomfortable because it's inappropriate or that people are going to judge you. It's uncomfortable because you've never had to do it before. But as you keep doing it and you keep getting more used to that, and know it's a phase, you know, this isn't going to last forever that you're avoiding several sensitivities. It's a phase, but you're investing in yourself. And so You're just doing what you need to do for this period of time and honor that. So that is the kind of the second tip I was mentioning about friends gatherings is try to bring something if you can, if that's the nature of the dinner or the event. If you can't, then coordinate with the host ahead of time. Let them know, hey, super excited. Here's my list of foods. Do you mind if we figure out a way? Coordinate with them. And then my last tip, and this was the overriding tip. I kind of floated into everything else, but the overriding tip is own your shit. Own it. And I know it, like I said, I know it's going to feel weird up front, but you have no idea who you might actually be helping by speaking your truth and honoring your voice and saying, hey, this is what I'm doing for my health and well-being. And for right now, I'm choosing not to eat these foods because they don't make me feel well and they hold me back from my goals. So this is what I'm doing. And nobody, you don't need to explain yourself either. You know, it's a personal choice that you're making. Last and final tip is, because this is going to happen also, you sit down at a meal and you've done all your homework and you've done your due diligence and you sit down and there's your sensitivities glaring you in the face. You sit down and dang it, the green beans are fried or like battered and fried, or there's garlic all over the place, or cheese or butter, whatever it might be. Take a deep breath. You did the best you could. You did the best you could. Stressing about it, painting yourself into a box of anxiety. Oh my God, what's going to happen? I'm going to flare. I'm going to feel this. I'm going to feel that. I can't believe I did this. I can't eat out. I can't be with friends. Let it all go. You did the best you can. Your body is going to be fine. You might feel it for a couple days, and a couple days later, it'll be gone. And you learned, you know, okay, cool, that restaurant cooks their steak and butter, you know, whatever it might be. So when in Rome, when in Rome, meaning if that situation comes up, let it go and don't fret about it, and know that, you know, if you feel it, it'll go away a couple days later and you'll be fine and better experienced for the next time. All right, everyone. So that covers it all. So those are the tips for navigating restaurants, navigating social settings while having food sensitivities. I mean, the last part of this too that's so great is I feel like most of the world is really caught up to a lot of this. So most people know what paleo is. Most people know what gluten-free is. Most people know what dairy-free is. There's whole menus around it. There's a lot of people these days even know what the autoimmune paleo diet is. I mean, there's so many options out there that it's become a lot more on the forefront. So that helps a lot too. It's not like trying to do this 30 years ago, which would be so challenging. So, all right, everyone, I hope that was helpful. And I hope, you know, that this was helpful. And if any questions come up, don't hesitate to reach out. All right, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks so much. Bye.